All right. Okay, so good afternoon now. I think for most people, depends. I don't know. People are all over the world. We have people in France and who knows where else. So it's wherever you are, good, and then you fill in whether it's good morning, good afternoon, good evening. For me, it's a good afternoon. Actually, I've got a few minutes before I can say good afternoon, like 5 minutes, but that's okay. So we're doing something just slightly different. So let me just tell you, we've got the mics muted, and we've got the mics muted just so for everyone else's listening pleasure. When you're ready to speak, and this is about hearing from you, please understand we want to hear from you. We want your perspective, your thoughts, your comments, your questions, your concerns, your rebuttals, whatever. You simply raise your hand, and from this end, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, and you'll have the ability to do that once I grant it. So it's not like we're trying to squash the correspondence. We actually want you to talk, but we just want everybody to hear it. We had a couple of times over the recent discussions where people, they don't know. They have it unmuted. So that's what we're doing. So welcome. It's good to be here with you today. I am interested in your thoughts on this particular subject. I know that it is certainly not according to tradition, but at the same time, we did as I think as well as we could to explain the position that I presented. And watching Seth's video complete this morning, maybe I could have just saved us all some time and we watch that and then come to the dialogue and discuss it because it really made the point. I think it really drilled it home. I'm going to see if I can't get Seth just to upload just that video and, maybe put that 2 or 3 minute video out there and let people see it and directly link to the full class. But anyway, so I think that this is really important, and it's important for a lot of other reasons. Contextually, it helps us. If we get this right in Deuteronomy, then we're going to get it right. We're going to have it right elsewhere. Can I do a couple of examples? And by the way, I'm watching for people to raise their hands. So if you do raise your hand, I'll see it, and I'm going to try to keep my eye also on Deuteronomy. But let me give you a couple of examples. Let's do Jeremiah. Go with me to Jeremiah chapter 1, just as an example of how this knowledge, this awareness plays out. And some of you know a good bit of this, but just to show you the difference. Now, I think Jeremiah is a little bit less challenging to people. Why is that? Because we know that Jeremiah had a scribe. We even know Jeremiah's scribe's name was Baruch, Baruch ben Neriah. And if we can trust the two discoveries from Jerusalem, we have evidence from Jerusalem that we have a seal with Baruch ben Neriah's name on it. And one of them even has, it's actually a bulla, which is the impression in clay where a seal was pressed into it. One of these even has a fingerprint. So I'm going to read Jeremiah 1, and then I'm going to call on Clody. So 1 second, Clody. I'm going to do this real quickly. Yours is probably, hopefully I'm not holding you up. If type a note if you need to jump in right this second, because I don't want to hold you up if you, okay. So Jeremiah 1, verse 1. The words of Jeremiah, son of Hilkiah, one of the priests of Anatot in the territory of Benjamin, the word of the Lord came to him. Okay, we mentioned Jeremiah, we said him. In the days of King Josiah, son of Ammon of Judah, in the 13th year of his reign, and throughout the days of King Jehoiakim, son of Josiah of Judah, and until the end of the 11th year of King Zedekiah, son of Josiah of Judah, when Jerusalem went into exile in the 5th month. And then it says, now, by the way, in the Hebrew, there is a white space, a setumah. It's actually marked out in the Hebrew that says, okay, gap here. And then look at verse 4. The word of the Lord came to me. God, that's first person. The word of the Lord came to me. Before I created you in the womb, I selected you. Before you were born, I consecrated you. I appointed you a prophet concerning the nations. Verse 6, I replied. You see, that's first person. So the scribe, we can assume, maybe rightly, that the person who compiled this was Baruch. And we know from chapter 36 that all of the prophecies of Jeremiah from the beginning of his ministry, I'll call it, the 13th year of Josiah's reign, until, say, the 25th year, he put all of that into writing. You can read the story in Jeremiah 36. It was destroyed. That version 1 was destroyed, and he had to redo it. And so we get the idea here that this is at least a version 2. But you see, now look, go down with me to verse 11 of Jeremiah 1. The word of the Lord came to me. You see that first person? What do you see, Jeremiah? I replied, I see a branch. Look at verse 13. The word of the Lord came to me a second time. What do you see? I replied. Look at chapter 2. Verse 1. The word of the Lord came to me, saying. You see, it's important to notice this first, third person. Anyway, and this goes on and on and on. I'll say one more. If you go to Daniel and you read chapters 1 through 6, it's all third person. You get to chapter 7, and the scribe announces that what is going to follow is an actual prophecy of Daniel in chapter 7. So this is important. Now, speaking of important, I'm going to ask Clody to unmute.
Hi.
Hey, Clody, how are you?
Shabbat Shalom. I'm good.
Good to hear you.
I just wanted to share some thoughts. So I remember when I first read the Bible and I was like 13 years old, I saw this difference. I saw how in Deuteronomy that was the only book that had Moses speaking, and all the other ones were narrators. But then as I was trying to become the religious person on my 16th year of age, I was beginning to listen more to the head of my congregation than to my logic and to the common sense. So I think that what Jesus told, if he told,
Yeah.
that we should approach God's kingdom or God's word with a kid's heart, is true. We have to be very, very sincere and, as you put it, honest to the text. Also, I wanted to thank you and to congratulate you about this series, because I think that it's very important to put things in their places, meaning let's call things with their names, and let's not call the white black and the black white. I don't remember the verse of Jeremiah, I think it is, or Isaiah, I don't remember, that we should not sell truths for I don't remember the verse.
Yeah, buy the truth and sell it not. Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
I don't remember that. But it's something like that. So I think that it's very important for us to not believe everything in a blur. Common arts, and there is a very famous filmmaker in Albania. He's a young filmmaker. He likes to put his movies in a philosophy of blending philosophies and making gray areas. There is no black and white, he says. There is always the gray area.
Yeah.
Which is not like that, because truths are truths and untruths, or how do you say it? Lies are lies.
Yeah.
So if we try to blend everything, we would start to believe that everything is a commandment. Everything is written directly from God for us. While what if it is not like that? What if for God there are only the 10 commandments, and then we can start and build each other, and then we can start and pray and ask God for more than those. But making everything the same, and I tried to make this comment on the chat in the YouTube.
Yeah.
Making 613 commandments the same as the 10 commandments, I think that is not fair. And I think that what you are doing with this series is mind-blowing, and it's a blessing from God to us. And I thank you so much that you are diligently, like a little baby, staying there and seeing all the dots and all the commas and everything, and you're seeing anachronisms, but look at this and look at that, like a father explaining to their kids. I just want to thank you and congratulate you, and God bless you.
Well, thank you for the kind and encouraging words. And I'm interested, what you said really resonates with me. You said as a young person, you noticed some of this in Deuteronomy as you were reading the text. So first of all,
for the first time.
Yeah, no, but I think that is amazing. And you know what? It could very well be. First of all, I did not notice it as a young person. I was, only recently did I begin to notice this. But I think to what you just said, if you probably as a young girl were learning in school that you read a newspaper article carefully and you learn who is the speaker, who is the audience,
yes.
what,
The
what,
grammar,
when,
the
where,
grammar
why.
rules. Yeah.
So it only makes sense, but we again we take a traditionalist viewpoint. Someone tells us, no, you must read it this way. Orthodox Judaism and Roman Catholicism and Protestantism, Catholics, Protestants, Baptists, Charismatics, everybody has their own stricture to put on the scripture. If you discern the difference, that someone puts strictness around the scriptures and wants us to read it a certain way. But if we allow the words to speak to us, if we read the words for the sake of the words and on the basis of the words, the authors tell us. We just have to read it. And sometimes they don't tell us what the preacher or the priest or the rabbi says. Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, it is what it is. So I love this study, and my biggest concern in the past was no one really likes to make enemies. I certainly don't. And I want people to love the Bible like I love the Bible. And so, one of the rabbinic things that I came across early on, and this is some of the stuff that I may have covered in years past, but I'll get into some of this later. There are some of the rabbis who saw this in the Middle Ages, and they began to write on it. But here's what they said, Clody. They'd say things like, the person who sees it says nothing. The person who sees it says nothing. Why would that comment be there? Well, I'll tell you why. Because it goes against tradition. And they are so, and this isn't a bash on anyone. I have many wonderful friends who are Orthodox Jews, Karaite Jews, whatever. But the thing that I want to make the point of is they want to protect, they think, I want to protect the sheep from losing faith. Like if, so just to make this point, I think I'm preaching to the choir, but I like to preach and I like the choir. The idea is that if let's see how to put it. Some people believe that if I show that what people believe is not true, then they'll lose faith. And what I think now is, why in the world would I want people to retain elements of faith that isn't true? I mean,
Exactly.
I was in Christianity. I bought it hook, line, and sinker. And then, I realized that there were some problems with fundamental Christianity. I was scared. At first, I was scared, but I grew to be okay with, admitting. So I think it's important, wrapping up my rambling, is that I think it's important that we face the book with a very honest approach and then go from there.
I'm
So,
sorry, can I
yeah,
follow
yeah,
follow something?
yeah,
So I don't like to put names on YouTube pages publicly. I don't want to. I mean, I don't want. I don't mean to make any publicity. However, I've been listening to Myth Vision,
yeah,
and what is happening to Myth Vision is happening the exact opposite, because they are seeing discrepancies in between the text. They are putting all the text in the fire,
yeah,
and that makes people unbelievers, while their initial aim was to get to know God better.
yeah,
So this kind of study is perhaps, I think, the best approach to not lose faith,
yeah.
but to go to the real source of the faith.
Yeah, and I happen to love as a person Derek. He's a good friend, and we do approach things differently, and we are a product of our experiences. And so when he and I have been together, or talked on the phone, or even been to Israel together, I'm a believer, and so I'm kind of ribbing him, like, hey. And so I
Yeah.
I remember I told someone one day, their charge was that, Ross, you live in a world of make believe. I said, you're close. I said, Ross lives in a world to make believers. And what I want people to get is
And
that
to not lose them.
that's right. There's a distinction to be made between the world of make believe and making believers. By being honest with the text, by showing forth that there are issues with the text, we can learn so many wonderful things. Look, years ago, I put the New Testament, I closed it and I put it on the shelf, and in fear and trepidation,
Same.
I prayed and I said, Father, I want you to know that I love you with my whole heart and soul, and I don't want to make a mistake, but I have got to put this aside for the present, and I'm going to start with the Hebrew Bible. And it just so happened that God has allowed me to do that. But let me tell you, what I learned along the way is that many things in the New Testament text that I formerly just tossed out,
Exactly.
there are things in there that I need to go back and look at. And the reason I say that with confidence, and I'll talk to anybody about that. If somebody says, well, I can show you, I'll prove you. Yeah, well, bring it on, buddy, because I have seen enough of the issues and opportunities and textual discrepancies and problems in the Hebrew Bible, and I still come out as a believer, that I can say, well, we can look historically, critically, at some of these other problems that we found earlier in faith. And I intend to do that, by the way. So,
Yeah.
hey, it's fun
Okay.
stuff.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Okay, I am going to ask Julia to unmute. Hey, Julia,
Uh,
I got you.
Good morning. Good afternoon, Shabbat Shalom. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly well.
Okay. I think what I wanted to say, and what I'm getting from your study of Deuteronomy is, it made me think of the Tower of Babel. You know, when they wanted to make a name for themselves, so the consequences were to scatter them.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the main reasons why there is such problems is that it seems like it's less God focused. Now, I don't mean that God wrote everything, but what I mean is the focus, if it's taken away from what God intended for us, God's blessings, God's instruction, that's where we have an issue. It seems more focused, and it may not be focused on the individual who wanted to do it, but I think we got into an issue when we get into problems because they want to man focus it so much. It may be why it's such a hard time when people want to say Moses wrote all 5 books. That's all I want to hear.
Yeah.
Then the focus is on Moses. Moses. Even Moses, I don't think, wanted the focus to be on him.
Yeah.
And I think the problems that we got into, or people who wanted to do, the slippery slope is the man focus. When Clody talked about all the rest of those commandments, the focus was on, these are what I want to add because it falls up under this. These technicalities, I think the reason why there are problems is when it becomes more man-focused. And when you are saying Moses didn't write all of these, I think what I really liked is when you said in your class, I bolded it. Because there is a different writer doesn't mean it's not true.
Yeah.
I think it's very important because we don't know the narrator. It does not mean that what was done was unimportant.
Right.
I think the problem is when you want to make it more man-focused, when you're not willing to listen or to throw everything away because your belief that he may have written all 5 books may not be true and it's being shown that it isn't, that you want to throw everything away. I don't think that that's what God intended for this wonderful book that is a guidebook for us.
Yeah.
So that's
well,
all
let me ask you one other thing. Those are good points. One other thing that I was thinking about when you said that is going along with that as the problem where people focus, man focus, as you put it, is this authoritarian viewpoint where a teacher or minister or rabbi or priest or who knows, fill in the blank, says, you can't understand this without my key.
Yes.
You know, like you have to have a special colored glasses. I remember when I was a kid. Now, my mother was very big on making a real breakfast, you know, as much as she could. You know, you had this, you did, but sometimes we could have cereal, and sometimes in that cereal we could eat some sugary kind of cereal, and in that box was a toy. And you put your little dirty, well, we had to wash our hands, but you put your little grubby fingers in there and you pull that toy out, and lo and behold, it's a decoder ring. And the only way you could read the back of the box was if you had that code. And man, I'm going to tell you, I used to love that kind of stuff. But here's the thing. What gets me is that a lot of people claim that they have that decoder. And you can't figure it out on your own. Whereas what we're saying is read the book, read it carefully, and read it and read it and read it again. And I think that's where we begin to sort this out.
I think the things that you mentioned are people's personal Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
I am the only one. No, you're not supposed to make a name for it. I think ego is so many. It's our personal Tower of Babel to want to make a name, and that is the slippery slope. This ego that we must make sure to understand. We must. You know, when you start looking at or start looking out, you must also look at yourself and say, "Wait a minute."
Yeah.
And this is where your relationship with God, I think, comes in so important.
And it's sometimes a little scary. Some of
Yeah,
this is uncharted water, but those are
yeah.
excellent points, Julie. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Hey, thank you. Now, Sue, I'm going to pull you up in just a minute, but let me read a comment from YouTube. Dolores Testerman said, I saw the first person issue when reading the Bible the first time. When asking a preacher later, he dismissed it as breathed by God, infallible, bringing it up as disbelieving God. Excellent point, Dolores, because people quickly become offended because they think, because you're talking about authorship, if I challenge the traditional view, then I am challenging not the traditional view. They say I'm challenging what? They think I'm challenging God himself. So good point, Dolores. Okay. I am asking Sue to unmute.
Shabbat Shalom.
Hey, Shabbat Shalom, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing great. Praise Yahovah. Um, I wanted to agree with both Clody and Dolores. I had a year as a new Christian all by myself, and I just kept reading the Bible from cover to cover. So I went through the Old Testament like 3 times or something. And I remember, I understood that this was there was third person and first person. There was no problem with that. It didn't create an issue to me. But then once I connected with the church, first of all, they hardly ever referred to the Old Testament.
Right.
And secondly, when they did, it was inspired of God and Moses wrote everything. And frankly, I didn't give it a lot of thought. So it wasn't until a couple of years ago when I listened to your original New Look at the Pentateuch,
Right.
that you pointed out the importance of noticing third person, first person. And that has really made a big difference for me. It's been important in my study. And I just wanted to join Clody in thanking you for giving us that perspective. And it's such a simple thing, and yet we pass right over it and we don't think about it.
Well, I appreciate, and what I really like is that this group, and I've often said this group is not a beginner's group. Most people who join us on Saturday morning are people who've been looking at this carefully for many, many years. And so it's there is that immediate challenge. So you don't have someone saying, well, he's just pulling the wool over our eyes. These are people like yourself who've read it many times. So thank you very much, Sue. I appreciate it. It's good to see you.
Well, thank you, and Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Hey, Shabbat Shalom. Okay, I'm going to ask Dave Tyler to unmute. Hello, Dave. Shabbat Shalom. Let's see if I got you. Ask to unmute. You'll have to unmute yourself. You should have the magic. There you go.
Are you there?
I'm here.
Yeah. Hey, how y'all doing? Listen, I was just going to read Carolyn's point because her mic is down. So
Okay.
This is from Smith Kaiser.
Okay.
It says she believes that there is a pole, a dichotomy, good and evil. We, mankind, stand on one pole. God is on the other. The Holy Spirit is in the middle ground. It is up to us to exercise the Spirit and draw closer to the pole that God is standing on. But there's a gray, as Christ said, we must learn to judge, to discern the facts. Christ said, you don't condemn a man who stole to feed his family. We, as God-fearing people, should hold up the man until he can get his feet and get a better or a fishing pole and lie and bait and to catch his own fish to feed his family. I'm sorry, that's my, hopefully I didn't read it too bad.
No, that's okay. That's okay. And I'm glad you read it because some of the comments are coming through and observations like Carolyn's are always wanted. And I saw early in the conversation, she said their mic was out. So hopefully she
Yeah.
gets that taken care of for next week. I'm glad you read that. Do you
Yeah.
have any commentary to add to that, Dave, or did you have other thoughts? Or
No. I like I said, I just wanted to speak. I spoke a lot of what I was thinking last night at
oh yeah,
Shabbat Welcome. And so people are always welcome to come to that. It's on Discord and there's a rebroadcast on YouTube. Listen, the other thing I'll say, because what parent Carolyn said is very heavy, but I got to say this, Seth's production is just, it continues to rise. And, thank Seth for us, because I know you gave him all the data in there. I get that. But man, he really polished that and it looked beautiful.
Yeah,
well, it's
that's
it's
like,
get.
Professional.
Hey, I'll tell you what. I especially like the part where the guy jumps the Jordan.
Yeah.
And look,
Yeah.
the way this is working is getting better and better, because, like, yes, I gave Seth kind of a write up, but then Seth comes back to me and he says, "Okay, let me make sure. Let's talk through this." And so it's really, I think the better that I'm able to explain, like, there's no way I could have imagined something that well done. But the
No.
more I work on my end of it, the better these presentations are going to be. And I tell you, I think everyone would agree, if I can just take that video and put it out, I
Yeah.
think it's going to help people more than rambling for an hour. I mean, I
Yeah.
really do. So
And he's gonna. And one of the things that I wanted to say is, could we have imagined this a year ago? No.
no,
I remember when Seth came and said, You're going into too many different directions on that."
yeah,
Anyways, what's important is what Carolyn said. I didn't mean to gab so much, but if you could respond to her comment, and I'm sorry that she can't quite have the dialogue with you here, but whatever. I tried to read her. No, I'm just saying I tried to read her point, which is, there's this dichotomy, Psalm 1, right?
yeah.
And read Psalm 1. It tells you right there, there's these two ways. You got to choose which one's for you.
Yeah,
All
no,
right.
I see it. No, I think it's good, and I appreciate that comment. And certainly there is, as you say, there are many passages in the Hebrew Bible about this dichotomy. There's a way that seems right to man, and so forth. So what we're trying to discern, and this, by the way, goes towards what I'm trying to discern in terms of looking at authorship. Again, a biographer's words can be very important and essential, and you put your own descriptor. But what is it where God spoke to Moses and Moses wrote what God told Moses to write? That I want to distinguish between those two. So anyway, now Seth has told me we've got Eric Davies, and I don't see Seth. Can you unmute him or give? I don't see it on here. Oh, wait a minute. Never mind. I got it. There we go. Hey, Eric. Shalom.
Testing 1 2.
I got you. How are you?
Hi, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Good, man. I respect what you guys are, doing immensely. So, but that aside, what comes to mind just listening to that was there's an interesting graph of the New Testament tradition, a hermeneutic on the original Testament, as Dave likes to call it, or I've heard, where Peter denied the sanctity of the Septuagint in Homily 2, chapter 3, and chapter 50, and hence the graph of BA good money change,
Eric.
or that's English,
Hey, Eric.
Yes,
Eric,
sir?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to follow, but your speech is coming through garbled, and
Yeah, my
it's
signal's not very good.
I am so sorry, but it's not
You're
fair
good,
to
you're good.
you. It's not fair to you, because your point, which it sounds from what I can hear, is going to be a wonderful point, but I just can't make it out, and neither can other listeners. So is there a way, short of us praying for a better reception for you, is there a way for you to articulate that in writing, and then we'll try to bring it out? If that's possible, that would be great, Eric. I am so sorry, but that's what we've got to do, if that's okay. All right. Thanks for understanding, by the way. And then I know, Carolyn, your microphone isn't working. But let me get Eric Nagel. Eric, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hello there.
Hey, Shabbat Shalom, my brother. How are you?
About the same Louisiana without the humidity this time of year for some reason. It's kind of strange.
Hey, before you jump in, you alerted me this morning. By the way, I always appreciate your good mornings and Shabbat Shalom messages, and the fact that you sometimes bring me up to speed on things that I may have missed. One of which is that our mutual friend and someone that many of our viewers would appreciate knowing if they don't, our
Yeah.
mutual friend Nehemiah Gordon was in ICU. Can you give us an update on that from what you know?
Last evening I saw that they posted, Linnell was there with him and did the posting. He was still in ICU at that point, smiling and of course working on his computer, doing research for whatever else he's doing, and never stops. But he had what I had many years ago, an anaphylactic reaction, apparently to some kind of allergy treatment. I don't quite know.
Okay.
But the doctors got him. He's recovering well. They were hoping that I think they were going to release him today,
Okay.
but I haven't gotten any updates on that. But he was smiling and saying and hello, and like I said, pecking or tapping on his laptop, like Keith would say.
Gotcha. Okay, so we just need to keep Keith and Keith to keep Nehemiah and Linnell in our prayers, and hopefully Nehemiah is speedily and fully recovered from this anaphylactic thing, and we'll just keep him in our prayers. So thanks for bringing that update.
Amen. Amen. Yeah. And of course, being who I am and where I came from, the one word that will explain where I'm going with all this is emunah, and how studying like you teach and many others here have gone through is, I was fortunate to have, well, after a stumbling start in a church a couple of years, emunah started being taught to me 20 something years ago, that doesn't matter what someone thinks or says, or the evidence like is being presented on your teachings and others, that it doesn't matter, doesn't affect my emunah, my faith in our Heavenly Father.
Right.
In fact, it strengthens it, because if you have emunah, in my opinion, you're attracted to truth, because He is truth. And if something falls aside, then you got to say, well, is that what I believe, or is that what I truly understand as truth? And being open to things maybe changing in that definition. Anyway, I appreciate it. It's going to be a wonderful run, and looking forward to more. Appreciate you listening.
Hey, I appreciate you, and I appreciate your insights. So, it is a matter of, like, there is a discussion in some medieval literature where, I mentioned that one rabbi said the person who sees these things remains quiet. In other words, don't bring it up. And someone else, a student of this rabbinic teacher, we're going to get into all the details of this later, but just for now, so you know the story, a student of the teacher who said, don't tell anybody about these problems with the text, that suggest that Moses didn't write all these things. And this student said, what difference does it make if Moses wrote it or someone else wrote it? If I believe that this is part of the book, then it behooves me to learn, I'm paraphrasing, to learn who is speaking and what does that, discerning the difference between speakers, what does that do for my faith? So if Dave Tyler and I are good friends, but if Dave Tyler and Moses were standing side by side and they had opposing opinions about something, I think that Dave would be okay if I said, Dave, I love you, man. You're like one of my best friends in the whole world. But if you don't mind, I'm going to take Moses's word for this. I think Dave would say, oh, that's Moses. I didn't know that. I'm with you. So it just helps us to kind of keep that straight. So that's my point. So I agree. Thank you for your comments, Eric. And Todd and Angel, 1 second. Let me give a couple of these points from our YouTube friends. Ross Bearden is a good friend of mine. We've met personally, but we've also corresponded, and I always appreciate Ross's research. It says in YouTube comment from Ross, it seems that Deuteronomy 29:1 is saying there was a separate / additional covenant made with the children of Israel besides the covenant made at Horeb. Great point. If you read Deuteronomy 29, it says exactly that. Now, those words are given third person from this narrator. So this narrator or biographer is letting us know that Deuteronomy 29 is the setting of a covenant. Some of you have read about this in different works and so forth. In fact, our good friend Barry Page has written quite a bit on the distinction of these different covenants. So I refer you to Barry Page's work for that. Ross continues in another comment, meaning there was a Horeb covenant and, all caps, a Moabitic covenant. And but all of those points are valid and interesting, and I hope to really explore that when we get to that point in Deuteronomy. One more point, and then we'll pick up our next comments on the Zoom call. Dolores says the same situation happened to the New Testament redacted, added to, changed, and third-person narratives. If you look past those, I see continuation of the same story. So I think I can accurately understand what Dolores is presenting, is that in the Hebrew Bible, we do have evidence of redaction, additions, deletions, and so forth, just like we see in the New Testament. So if you can look at the narratives and you can discern a historical core, then we're in a better place historically. You see what I'm saying? I think that's her point. And then she says in one more comment, not all Hebrews went to Egypt. Those who didn't experience Sinai and inner covenant needed to choose, so multiple covenants happened for them. Thank you for your comments, Dolores. And Todd and Angel, I'm going to ask you to unmute. Hey, guys. Hey, Shabbat Shalom.
Kind of adding on just real quick about the New Testament deal and everything. I think what people really need to understand is the problem, I think, with the New Testament is the fact of Paul. So you got everything else that has been edited and added and everything else to back him up. I think that's the main problem. Like you said, but you put it up on the shelf and waiting for and everything like that. I kind of look at it as that's what we did with Paul. We put him on the shelf, and then decide to look into what's really being said in the New Testament, and it really opens everything up for you. Especially if you start questioning things like the virgin birth, and because that goes against Genesis chapter 6. And other things, just kind of just keying in on that. But interesting, you brought up chapter 34, Deuteronomy, during the class.
Yep.
And I was looking at Richard Freeman's book, and as short as 34 is, there's 3 different writings in it.
Yeah.
I mean, you got one from Deuteronomy 1, you got the Jehovahist, and then you got the priesthood. I just thought that was really interesting. That's really the only chapter I think that I found in Deuteronomy that was actually split up like that.
Yeah.
Which was really interesting. But let's see, I'll make sure I don't forget anything here. Oh yeah, something that popped in my head too when during your class, it'd be a long project, but it would be interesting to retype Deuteronomy just in the Moses first person and just see how that turns out.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of cool. Like I said, it'd be an involved project, but
You'd be amazed at how many things sit on my laptop right now, because it really is interesting, and anyone can do this. You take the text and you pull this text in, and you simply do what we're doing. You go through it, you read carefully, and you say, is this first person? Is it third person? And it's eye-opening. Let's just put it that way. One thing you mentioned, Richard Elliott Friedman's work, and I get questions. I got a question from a viewer. Hopefully this person is watching today or will watch later. I think they were writing from Europe. So it might be kind of late in the evening for them. I don't know. Anyway, the question was, Ross, do you believe or accept, I can't remember their language, the documentary hypothesis? Now, Richard Elliott Friedman, that you mentioned, is a big proponent of the documentary hypothesis, which has been the prevailing view, although it's been challenged and modified, and various things have been presented for quite some time. But from the 19th century, this came about mid-1800s from people like Graff and Graf, and it just ultimately was developed, ultimately brought together into a synthesis by Wellhausen. Now, but the question is, do you accept it? Well, it's a loaded question. What I prefer to say is that I accept the fact that there are many things that this academic approach has uncovered when they carefully study the Hebrew Bible, particularly the Pentateuch. And so when you look at Deuteronomy 34, as you mentioned, according to the documentary hypothesis, you see that there are at least 3 sources identified. We might dismiss that right off hand, saying, oh, that's crazy, but there is a reason that they come up with that. So I think people will begin to see. I don't accept the documentary hypothesis as it is classically laid out. I think that there are many, many wonderful truths in those studies, but I think I would adopt a different view, slightly different view, but the same sense in that I'm looking for the original sources. So, but yeah, I'm glad. I know you're looking into that material. There are other books that give you slightly different views on that, and there are some really good videos out. One, I'm going to try to think of the name of it. Maybe someone can find this. It's by a YouTube page called Useful Charts. And I think the video, have you seen that? I think the video is called Who Wrote the Torah? Yeah. And so the view of those that is presented that gets closest to my view, for what that's worth, is more of a supplemental hypothesis. And so in short, I think this is going to become more clear as we work through. I believe that there is an authentic piece written by Moses, and I think that piece was added to, and we see elements of that in Deuteronomy. So we'll develop my theory, which I think is a biblical theory, as we work through. But somebody might want to look that video up. It's pretty good, actually.
Yeah, I can't remember. I don't know if we've seen that one. There's a lot of others that we've seen, because he does all kinds of stuff, though, as far as charts.
Yeah, but, he's got some good stuff, and his videos are widely viewed. He has millions of views on these things. So.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, yeah, you can look for that.
And one last comment.
Sure.
On the back of that cereal box, when you decoded it, it wasn't a crummy commercial for Ovaltine, was it?
No.
I mean, you wasn't like Ralph in the bathroom trying to find that thing.
Yeah. No, I tell you, it's those kind of decoding exercises, I think, maybe trained our mind, Todd, to where now, thanks to those cereal boxes, look at us now. Look how far we've gone with such little training.
And I didn't choke on one toy that was in them.
Nope. That's good. That's good. I'm glad someone else remembers it. Some of y'all
Yeah,
might not remember
those
that.
days are gone.
I don't know. All right. Hey, I appreciate you. Okay, Miriam Cormier, I am going to ask you to unmute, and hopefully you are ready. Let's see. Can you hear me? Can I hear you?
Shabbat Shalom.
I got you. I got you. What can we do for you, Miriam? It's good to hear from you.
Okay, thank Yahweh for a miracle today that I didn't get last night on Discord at Sabbath service.
All right.
Oh.
I agree with you.
Okay, I don't know why I can zoom in, but I can't Discord.
I know it. Well, you zoom in today.
Thank Yahweh for that. But I love the teaching. I am so, happy with all that I can get and gather and grow from at 69, because we can keep going.
Yeah.
But I didn't have exactly a quote, maybe a little smaller in the middle, but I had a quote that I had wanted to, I did post it last night in Discord, and David did read it, but it didn't have my little excerpts to it. Okay, and it's from one of our former presidents' wives, Eleanor Roosevelt.
Okay.
Yesterday is history. We can learn, and that's what we're doing in Torah, learning from history. And that's a great honor to have that opportunity and privilege. Tomorrow is a mystery. We don't know what Yahweh going to reveal, what he will allow us to know, because according to Deuteronomy 29, just one little circle or two out of it, it says that the secrets of things belong unto the Yahweh.
Yep.
But those things revealed belong unto us, our children, forever.
Amen.
That we may do all the words of this Torah.
I love it.
And so the moral of the story is it's still a mystery today. And the quote goes on, and today is a gift from Yahweh to be in his presence, to know him. That's why they call it the present.
Yeah.
The present is in his presence. We can't dwell in his presence in the past.
I love it.
I look forward to that possibility in the future, but we are here now. And so therefore, we got to seize these moments of glorifying him, of learning more of his Torah, of being in his presence and doing his will. That's why it's a present. Is a present to us, is his presence, and that's what I want to relay. I am so thankful to you. I thank you all for this Sabbath service, so beautiful. I thank Seth for his greatness. We ought to be able to be a blessing to him and his family. And so we give glory unto Yahweh in all those ways of doing good unto all in his people. And so Thank you for this day and all that has been said and done. I am just so blessed and full.
Well, I am too, and it's always good to hear your voice. I'm so thankful that your microphone worked perfectly on Zoom. And so you have a wonderful Sabbath, and thank you.
Shabbat
Thanks.
shalom to all.
All right, Shabbat shalom. Now, let's see if Sister Nikita, I'm going to ask you to unmute. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, my brother. How are you today?
I'm doing wonderfully. How are you?
Oh, wonderful. Praising the Most High and thanking Him for this wonderful class that's going on. It's beautiful that you bring out the authorship so we can understand better, more clearer what could and could not have been what Moses said. The point I wanted to say to what Clody said earlier about I would rather have the truth than have the lies, because the lies profit us nothing.
Right.
That which we believe that isn't true profit us nothing. It's completely designed to lead us astray. It reminded me of my mother when we were little kids. My mother had 3 kids and I had a little sister. And she's like, don't get off the porch. I want you to stay on the porch. I'll let you know when you can get in the yard. That was what she said.
Yeah.
So my sister comes and she's in the yard. And I'm like, why are you in the yard? She said, because it's all right to be in the yard. So we get in the yard. So mom comes and she sees us all in the yard. And she's like, didn't I tell you not to get off the porch? So while we're sitting there, my brother and I and her, all out with our bottoms red hot from the spanking that we received.
That's right.
I looked over and I asked her, I'm like, why did you lie to us? And she said, because I wanted to be in the yard.
Hey, that's
Okay,
the bottom line.
Well, it's what they wanted. So when we give the credibility of authority to the wrong source, we can be led astray.
Right.
We can all get that spanking to where we start understanding that this is not the words of the person that I know so well. I had put in the comments that the relationships that each one of us have with the Most High is personal. When you have a personal relationship with someone, you can discern what you know that they would say because they're consistent.
Yep.
You know, you have a relationship with your wife. If someone comes and tells you that Miss Bridget said such and such, you would be like, there is no way she said that.
That's exactly right. I know what she says, and usually she's not going to send it through somebody else. She's going to give it to me straight.
Exactly. Unless it's something, unless it's some reason she could not contact you that you would already previously know. So when you develop that relationship with the Most High and you read that word slowly and loudly, and then when you go to get to a particular chapter and it strikes you as odd, you like, okay, number one, this does not benefit the Most High's righteousness.
Yeah.
Because each party involved is not, the things that were done were not righteous. That's what actually led me out of my former faith. Because
Right.
if you stand in the shoes of each of the participants of that faith, one of the participants can say that I was created for an unrighteous purpose.
Mm-hmm.
If my creation is going to be to cover sin, what is that teaching the person that actually did sin?
Yeah.
Other than it's giving them a license to continue sinning.
It's telling them it's all right to get off the porch is what it's doing.
That's what it's doing. Yes, it is. It's like, but why? Because that's what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Great point, Ross. Great point. But yeah, so and I always come back to the garden in everything. That's where I live, in the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
So it benefited the serpent to say what he said, or so he thought. Okay, because he was going to show God that, yeah, this might be your highest creation, but they can be manipulated.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the smartest. I beat them. And the verse in Jonah 2:8 that I love so well, where it says that they that observe lying vanities forsake their own mercy. I cannot live a life of lies, give myself over to them willingly, and then think the Most High will be pleased with me.
Yeah.
Yes. So
hey, good stuff. Good stuff. And it really does come down to I think all of us have spent so much time in the book, in the Bible, that like I really feel like I know Moses. Like
Yes.
as I read through those texts, and the same, I grew up a little boy. I grew up in church, and Todd described, initially putting aside the writings of Paul helped him clarify, because some of the things, and of course it says, believe me, I'm a little rusty on the New Testament, but isn't it Peter that says, people have wrestled with Paul's writings, and so forth. Well, that's true. They were wrestling with them then, they're wrestling with them now,
Yes.
because they seem to say something different than what do Jesus's words. And so for me, and this is it's going to come to your point in a minute, Nikita, to me, my setting aside the New Testament happened over a long period of time. At first I said, I know that Peter says Paul was hard to understand. Yeah, he's hard for me. I'm going to put him aside for right now, but I'm leaving everything else. And then eventually I put the whole thing aside. But respectfully, I just said, look, it's for somebody else. Maybe it's not for me. My faith is oriented in the Hebrew Bible, whatever. But one of the books that I read along the way while I was on that journey from Christianity to whatever I am now was a book by a scholar by the name of Robert Funk, Funk. And he was a scholar, is a scholar. I don't know if he's still alive, but he wrote a book called Honest to Jesus. And I don't remember, like, I've read a lot of books since then, but I don't remember how good the book was. But what I recall about the book is that he was part of a group called the Jesus Seminar. You can look this up. And this school, this academy, this assembly of people came together for the express purpose of working through the gospel narratives to determine what is authentic Jesus and what's not. Now, when I first picked that book up, I thought this person is going to hell and bringing everybody with him that believes like him because he's a liberal nut job scholar. And, I didn't want to hear what he had to say. I didn't care what he said was Jesus, what wasn't. By God, if it had red letters, it was Jesus. But later I read that book again, and I was a little bit more open to it because I thought, growing up in Christianity and loving the Bible so much, I feel like I know what Jesus would say, what he wouldn't say. Now, I know this sounds subjective, but I think most of you get what I'm saying. So you can read the Gospels and you can say, did Jesus say, eat my flesh and drink my blood? That was one of those things that I said, if I were putting colored beads in a box, like the Jesus Seminar had a bead system where if it's authentic Jesus, it's a certain color, and, you work your way to, he may have said it, he said something like this, but not just this. He would never have said it. My vote would be Jesus would never have said that. You
Yes.
see? Now, so people go, well, who cares? Why would you even care about that? Well, now that same idea is in my mind about Moses. Like when I read the text of the Pentateuch, I'm going, did Moses really say that? Would Moses really say that? And I know some of my fundamentalist friends are saying, how dare you? I even got scolded on Discord this morning from a person that I really like who basically said, I'm not going there because their approach is the fundamentalist approach that Moses said everything in the Torah or whatever. Well, it goes back to authority, and your sister did not have the authority to tell you to get off the porch, but she did anyway.
Yes.
And I think that is a good analogy. I think what you now would say, I know that didn't come from Mama, and I think we have to be willing to face that and say those kind of things in the text itself. So I always appreciate your comments and your insights, and I'm happy to have friends along the path who are willing to look at this and challenge, and say, no, I think Moses did say this, or I think he didn't. But this Jesus seminar, I think it would be fun as a group. We can do it in Discord, or who knows, maybe as Seth and I get settled in, maybe we'll go live from time to time and talk about a certain text and have people vote. Do you think that what's the likelihood? Moses said this, there's no doubt. Moses may have said something like this, but not this. Moses wouldn't have said anything like that. And just see where it comes out. I think it might be an interesting exercise.
I believe you. I had just went through a couple of months ago the book of Leviticus with some friends, and we had gotten to that point to where we were like, okay, there's no way.
Yep.
There is no way this was inspired by the Most High, because the righteousness of the Most High is not served. That was almost like our litmus test for everything.
Yeah.
Because just like when Nathan told David that because you have given the enemies of God a reason to blaspheme his name,
yeah,
there were some passages in Leviticus that would give the enemies of the Most High a reason to blaspheme his name, as saying that this does not benefit your righteousness. It's almost like a system of money, like someone had in the chat, money changers. It's a money thing. And why the Most High has everything? Why would he need your money? Now the house is going, but what are the extra gifts for? It's only for the benefit of man. So there's no, we had questions about that. So and yes, if you do that, let me know, because I'd love to be a part of the panel. That would be a great thing.
Well, I think it's fun, and I'm happy to hear that you're doing similar thoughts and working through these texts with other friends too. And I think that's important. I think we ought to be looking at these texts and really considering, hey, okay, let's talk about this. And look, that's not easy to find a group of friends that are willing to look at and challenge longstanding, I guess, views and so forth. So anyway, it's always good to hear from you. I appreciate you very much. Have a beautiful Sabbath.
You too, sir. You too, Sue. And thank you again for the opportunity.
Hey, thank you. All right, I'm going to 1 second, Elisheva. I'm going to pick up a couple of points from our YouTube audience. Dolores Testerman says, Yehovah is truth. The more we honestly seek truth, the more he gives us. And then the next point is, she's agreeing with Nikita's analogy. And Doug Martin brings up the Jesus Seminar are a collection of people who are mostly atheists. That may be true. I don't know any of them personally. There are a lot of scholars who are at least agnostic. Some are atheist. What I find is that is not necessarily a reason to dismiss their scholarship. So, for instance, Bart Ehrman is a known atheist, but Bart Ehrman happens to be one of the most brilliant New Testament scholars in the world, of all time, I guess you could say. So I don't have to agree theologically with him or come to the same conclusions, but if I want to know something about the New Testament text, I'm going to give his opinion some weight. So for what it's worth, the Jesus Seminar is probably, made up of it is all academics. Some of those could be exactly like Doug says, but, weigh it. If you're interested in that, it's at least worth, I think, a look. Anita, hello, Anita. If I hadn't listened to these conversations afterward, I would not have understood your point from the class. Well, that's good. So that's why we have it, is to further explain the class. And just so if I missed it, I thought I said it pretty clearly, Anita, but the point was there are a lot of text in Deuteronomy that are not the words of Moses. If I didn't make that clear and I was confusing, let it be known that the point of that class is the words of Moses in parentheses indicates that a lot of the words that are attributed to Moses are not the words of Moses. All right, let's see. We've got Elisheva. I'm going to ask you to unmute. Shabbat Shalom.
Can you hear me?
I can perfectly well.
Great. Shabbat Shalom, and thank you so much, Ross, and everyone for your insightful comments. I would like to read a quote. When I first read it, you probably will think, well, what does this have to do with anything? But I'll try to explain it.
All right.
It's from Albert Einstein, and it says, do not grow old, no matter how long you live. Never cease to stand like curious children before the great mystery into which we were born. Now, to me, that means it's not talking about growing old physically. I mean, I'm old physically. Y'all know I am. I'm 81 and proud of it. I'm laughing. But hopefully not old spiritually. I just think it's always important to stay fresh, to ask questions, to read with an honest frame of mind, and not let our preconceived notions come into play.
Yeah.
We need to put them out. And I think I found a passage in Devarim years ago that always spoke to me. And it talks about growing old, but it talks about growing old in your mind, not growing old in your life, because it's Deuteronomy 4:25, and it says, when you beget children and children's children, you will have grown old in the land. But it doesn't use the word for old as an old age, which is yakan, the root. It uses yashan. And from what I understand, yashan is the opposite. Yashan is like new or fresh. And so we're not supposed to grow old, yakan, in the land. We're supposed to remain new and fresh in our thoughts and in our lives. And
Yeah.
always, I just think that's really, really, really important. And maybe that's what's kept me young, because I never have stopped asking questions since I was a little girl, and I'm still asking. So, and there were times when all of this was really a challenge for me, but
Yeah.
I had to, like you and so many others, I had to put it aside and say, okay, so what's true? What's true? What do I know? And what is where I've been just propagating all of my preconceived notions in fundamentalism. And I mean, I had brought this up about Moses and his own death, whatever, in one discussion in another group that I was in, and I was kind of put down, and it was explained in a roundabout way. Oh yeah, sure, he could write about anything because it was God inspired and all of this.
Yeah.
But that's just beating around the bush, and I don't think we can do that with the text.
Yeah, I'm done with bush beating. I did that for a long time.
Me too. But anyway, thank you for your comments, and everybody else. Everything you said just speaks to my heart, and I just feel rejuvenated today. And last night with the Sabbath with Dave and Patty, it's just really good to be with people who are not, we can say, like-minded. Not that we all have the same opinions, but we're all trying to be on the same journey and be open to one another and learn.
Amen. And and hopefully everyone here, as I look through the names, I know most of you. I hope that people know, if you're new here and you say, well, I don't care what these people are saying, they're crazy. I don't believe anything they're saying. I'm fine with that. I would rather a group of people who are willing to challenge one another and, as you put it, stay young in that sense, keep our thoughts active rather than someone who holds on to old ideas that are untenable, that just won't work. Like it's really, it creates more of a, when people think that we live in a world of make-believe, it's because we hold on to things which are unbelievable. Now, does that mean that everything in terms of fate is easy to understand and believable? No, there are things that have happened to me in my walk, in my life, that I wouldn't even try to explain to people, because not that I have any more miraculous things than anybody else, maybe less. Like I don't remember dreams. I'm not talking about that, but I'm saying there have been things in my path that I wouldn't even attempt to explain to somebody, because they would say, well, that's crazy, you're crazy, and I don't want to believe anything like you believe. But if we approach some of these things, some of these deep theological questions, and we approach them in a way that is sensible, I think that that's going to help us to make believers, to convince people that there is an element here. A big part of this is true, but we have to face the facts of these things. I think that's what's so important.
I do too.
Yeah. So thanks for not growing old, and
Well,
you're
check
a
with
good
me.
example.
Check with me next year. No, just joking. I mean, where is it in Proverbs that talks about the hoary head?
Yeah.
I know I've covered mine up with color, but it's still, I mean, I'm gray. I'm all gray. You're gray too. And so is my brother. And so I see Todd Keaton is too.
Yeah.
And some other people on here. But that shouldn't deter us. That should help us be thankful that we have gotten to where we are, and that we're still taking one breath at a time and one step at a time.
Well, one thing.
Yes,
go ahead. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
No, I'm done. Go.
I was just going to say, and hopefully this didn't interrupt a good thought. This is just something silly. People have asked, because Bridget has very little gray and she doesn't color her hair, but they say, man, you look like her dad. You're gray and she's not gray. And I said, let me tell you something. Living with me is like the fountain of youth. Because of living with me, yeah, I went gray, but she has retained her youthful, childlike appearance. Now, I'm sure she agrees with that 100%. I guarantee you. Just
I'm
text her and see.
sure. Knowing Bridget, she would say amen.
That's right. One more thing, just so people kind of get a understanding of Bridget. We had been married at the time well over 35 years or something, and somebody said, but wow, you guys have been married 35 years. That's so great. And Bridget's answer was, yeah, I could have been out for armed robbery by now. So just so you know, I take it on the chin a lot with Bridget, but I love her.
Yes, I know.
Thank you for your
Thank
comments.
You
I
are
appreciate you. Shabbat
You're
Shalom, Elisheva.
Shabbat Shalom. And by the way, Tuesday, for those of you who look at the calendar, marks the 9th of Av, Tisha B'Av, which is the destruction of the, around the time, both temples. And the rabbis say, that it was due to baseless hatred.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that's going on in the world. And the suggestion is to change it to baseless love. And I just think that's tremendously important.
Yep.
That we do that.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And while the enemies of Israel are breathing threats, by the way, I got in trouble. Someone wrote me, and obviously someone who does not like Israel, and said that I shouldn't ask for prayer for Israel. So get your pens out. If you're making a prayer list, put Nehemiah and the people of Israel on that list. I'm praying and asking you to pray for Israel, because you mentioned the 9th of Av. One group of people who know about the 9th of Av are Israel's enemies. And so God forbid that the menaces at Hezbollah and the Iranian religious group, not the Iranian people, but the religious fanatic Khamenei and some of those could very well, God forbid, I won't even speak the words, but think about that, particularly as we approach the 9th of Av, as you said. So,
Well, just one more thing, and we know from recent history that the favorite time of the enemies to attack Israel
yeah,
is on a holiday.
Yep.
Look what happened on Sukkot.
Yep.
Anyway, thank you. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Todd and Angel.
Hey, just for the record, I might look older than you, but you're older than me.
I believe you. I believe you. No, I think we both look about the same age. That's the thing. And Angel is 25, so that's
I had dark hair till I married her.
Well, see, that's the other thought. I don't know how to explain it, but that's a good point.
Just wanted to defend myself there.
All right, I hear you. I was thinking that. I'm glad you clarified that. One final point, unless someone else has a question, and I'll wrap this thing up. I mentioned that it's important to get this authorship thing down. A lot of people love Daniel, the book of Daniel. And I love the book of Daniel. And so one of the things, and by the way, I'll look at the YouTube channel before we go, but if you pick up the book of Daniel and you begin to read, and you start in chapter 1, verse 1, it's a story in the 3rd year of the reign of King Jehoiakim of Judah. Nebuchadnezzar came to Jerusalem and laid siege to it. So we can put a dot on a map, and we can put a dot on a calendar chronologically, and we can begin to follow this through. I did some of this in the Jeremiah series that we did a while back. The thing I want to point to is that in verse 6 of chapter 1 in Daniel, among them, talking about captives to Babylon, were the Judahites, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The chief officer gave them new names. He named Daniel, Belteshazzar, and so forth. Okay. Verse 10, the chief officer said to Daniel, notice this is all 3rd person. Verse 17, Daniel, I'm just clicking through here. Verse 17 of chapter 2, Daniel went to his house and informed his companions that they might implore the God of heaven for help regarding this mystery. So Daniel and his colleagues. Verse 24, chapter 2, thereupon Daniel went to Arioch. You just go through. I want you to know, I'm not going to do this very long because I want you to look at it and think about it. If you go through chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 6, all of that material, without exception, is 3rd person. All of it. And then you get to chapter 7. And this is interesting. Chapter 7, verse 1, it begins in the 3rd person, but similar to what we see in Deuteronomy. In the 1st year of King Belshazzar of Babylon, Daniel saw a dream and a vision of his mind in bed. Afterward, he wrote down the dream. Beginning the account, Daniel related the following. Get ready. You're about to hear what I believe are some of the words of the authentic Daniel. In my vision at night, I saw the 4 winds of heaven stirring up the great sea. 4 mighty beasts, different from each other, emerged from the sea. The first was like a lion, but had eagle's wings. As I looked on, its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted off the ground and set on its feet like a man and given the mind of a man. I'm not going to read the whole thing. My point is, as you get into the prophetic literature, you're going to see and be able to put into play the things that you're learning in our current study. Because again, chapters 1 through 6 of Daniel are written from a biographical standpoint. Again, I'm not saying it's not true. I'm not saying it's not important and divinely important. What I'm saying is, if you want authentic Daniel, if you want authentic Moses, if you want authentic, Look for first person. Now, that doesn't mean, by the way, that everything written in the first person is authentic to that writer. We're going to get into some of those examples as we go as well. But to Todd's point earlier, if you take the book of Daniel or the book of Deuteronomy, well, either one, but you take the book of Deuteronomy in a Word document, and you begin to maybe highlight and color code and put notes and begin to look at who is speaking. Can I discern what is authentically Moses? This is the question before us, and we're going to begin looking at some of that as early as next week. All right. Now, I don't see any hands up, but let me pull up the YouTube channel quickly and look through that. Dolores says, Greek mindset glorifies man's mind. Hebrew mindset looks at facts. Not all miracles are big. Some are small and so individualized and pinpointed that they could not be random. God instances, not coincidences. I like that. Eric or Arik, sorry, I had to get you to pronounce that. I said Eric. Maybe I'm off a little bit. The Agrapha from Homily 2, chapter 51, dated as early as the 2nd century, attributed to Peter, supposedly scribed by Clement, be ye good money changers. I'm familiar with this literature. The homilies and so forth, I am familiar with quite a bit here. But one of the things is it says, be ye good money changers. And the reference is to Jeremiah 8:8. What we know and what Eric is talking about is we have some early church fathers and we have some writings from early church history which describe. Now, the point you need to know is that the description is from the vantage point of their enemy, but we think some of it is a true assessment of their beliefs. Some of it's not. But in this case, we're talking about a particular group called the Evionim, the Ebionites. And the Ebionites believed that within the Pentateuch, within the law as they referred to it, there were false additions, the work of the lying pen of the scribes. Where did they get that? They got that from Jeremiah 8:8 and elsewhere. But the idea is that they said that you ought to be good money changers, meaning you ought to be able to discern between true and false coins, is the rest of that quote. So we get the idea that these were the first textual critics, if you will. I think it's important. I've done a lot of study on the Ebionites. It is quite fascinating, and I encourage people to look in to some of that information. Because what they're doing is they're looking for, clues within the text that say what is authentic, what actually goes from God and what came from someone else. Fascinating stuff. All right. I'm looking. I think it's time to say Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, I don't know why you wouldn't be, but go ahead and do that while you're checking things out. If you're not on our mailing list, get on the mailing list, rossknichols.com. We'll add you. And if you said, I think James Erickson put a comment that said he didn't get the newsletter, I suppose that you mean you signed up for it and you didn't get it. In that case, check your spam folder or your junk folder. Sometimes Satan has a way of stealing the word and throwing it in the trash. So sometimes it's just something electronic. Just go look in your spam folder, and if it's there, tell your computer it's not spam, and you'll get it next time. Have a beautiful week. Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov. We'll see you next time.